boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen of all ages, this is not your average film horror review podcast. No, we're not critiquing horror films. We are actually celebrating our favorites. I want to hear the stories of you at a sleepover party and not being able to sleep in a group of 10 friends. I want to hear stories that you had to hold someone because you were so frightened and so connected to a horror movie that you actually couldn't sleep that night. So, Anthony, I have one big question for you. Are you scared?
I am. I'm actually terrified. I'm terrified for so many different reasons, to be honest with you, but I'm definitely terrified of this one.
That's what I want to hear. Thank you for bringing that to the energy, or that energy to the show, sorry. Now, I just got a question for you now as well. What are we talking about today?
Well, I mean, if people are watching this, they're going to be able to see our little the little poster you've put up there, so I'm sure that they're going to know what we're talking about and all the 5-star reviews that are copped up there. But we're gonna talk about a movie that really stuck with me, really hit me, and really affected me long term, because it's been around for quite a time now. But we're going to talk about Martyrs today, and that, it's going to instigate some squabbles between some film snobs. I can guarantee you that people in the comments are going to be like, "This isn't a good horror movie. I had to read subtitles."
This is one that, like, I found that has separated audiences for several reasons. The big reasons have been too intense, and some people just being like, it's not true horror because it's too intense. But the big question I want to ask you, why is this the film you picked?
Well, look, for starters, this is your spin-off of the Not So Brightside. Big Courts. This is your show. Like I'm the guinea pig on this one, all right? So I'm not the host. I got nothing to do with this. I'm just here to fucking be the guinea pig, if you will.
No, definitely. This is the testing ground for a whole new spin-off under the Brightside umbrella, I believe.
This is your baby. This is your baby.
Well, the favorite thing I have from the Not So Brightside is whenever I get to talk about the horror movies I've watched and everything. So I think this is only fitted for me. If I'm going to have a spin-off, it's going to be on horror movies.
Mate, I couldn't agree more. But why you ask? Why is this one? So I assume this is what you're going to ask every person that comes on the show. I think
Definitely.
For me, being like a host of a show, and the fact that you gave me the questions 5 minutes before we went live, I happen to have written down a little spiel, a little blurb about different things, and conveniently they answer your questions, Courts there. So I think to answer this, I think everyone remembers the time that they finally witness a movie that kind of like transcends a genre or defines a genre in their own subjective consciousness, I guess. I also feel like horror fans these days are just suffocating on sort of mass-produced, over-dramatized, understimulating, undertitulating films. It becomes a bit more complicated to find films like Martyrs, or like High Tension or Haute Tension, however you want to pronounce it. Again, there's going to be a lot of French things in this, and I can't pronounce French names.
Yeah, we're going to definitely struggle between this.
It's going to be a mission.
We're going to talk characters' names, not actors, I think.
I think so. But to be fair, I'll give it a shot the first time. But like, come on, seriously, in 2022, the real world is a lot scarier than any sort of monster or slasher killer or, spooky kitchen appliance ghosts. We've kind of been bombarded with like cryptids and found footage realism, and like there's just gratuitous blood spilling everywhere. We're desensitized now, aren't we? Like it's not there anymore. We don't have that.
No, definitely.
That's something that just like makes us uncomfortable.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think there's new waves of different type of horror that come through that aren't even recognized as horror. The Safdie brothers releasing 2 films, Good Time and Uncut Gems. I find they're horror and anxiety because they make your anxiety play so hard that you can feel an attack coming on. And I feel like that's its own brand of horror in such a sense. Like, what is actually scary now has branched out to a lot larger than a poltergeist, I think is the best way to kind of say it.
I hard agree. And like, I don't want to talk too much about it, but just like, what is the most traumatizing film you've seen?
It's this.
It's this.
Yeah,
and
without
then
a doubt.
And if we don't talk about Martyrs, what else is there?
the one that really,
Requiem for a Dream, right?
yeah, it doesn't. I don't even feel comfortable saying it.
Yeah, yeah,
Like it genuinely takes me back to the moment that I saw it, and that you know me,
yeah,
I talk so much. I didn't talk to anyone for 3 days.
yeah. No,
Like I
yeah,
hate it.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, I get that, and like that's what I mean. Like it's really hard to. It's everything is subjective in regards to like what you find a horror or what affects you or traumatizes you, etc. And just because something's traumatic doesn't make it a horror film, I guess. But at the same time, it kind of does because that's the whole vibe of what a horror film is. And I mean, look, turn on the news and that shit is way scarier than the majority of the movies that come out these days. Everything is sort of overproduced, overhyped. I think that's why when finally like a film snob or like a horror snob or one of us find their movie, it really sticks with them. It's just their movie, and that's what I assume that's what your whole concept is on here, and why I was so happy to come on here.
Well, that's why, like, I decided this. Like, you pitched to me about a couple months ago, being like, "I want you to have your own thing," and I was like, and it evolved from horror reviews, and I was like, "Well, everyone kind of does that." And then, the more I conversed about people, like, why they like the scary movie or a movie they were too traumatized to watch again. For me, it's Requiem for a Dream. Or a favorite, it would be like The Frighteners by Peter Jackson. I don't want to actually sit there and be like, why is it a 10 out of 10? I want to sit there and be like, why do you love it? Like, what is like the rabbit hole that you went down? Did you research more about the film after? How do you recommend it to people? Where does it actually connect with you? And why is it the movie that you wanted to pick? Rather than being like, oh, Midsummer is the best horror film I've ever seen, or Hereditary or something. It's like,
oh mate, I could go on Midsummer as well. Don't get me started on that one.
I think we'll have to do a panel episode that goes for 4 hours in that one. I know so many people when I told them about this, they're like, "Can I do Midsummer?" And I'm like, "Maybe." Like,
but yeah, like I mean, this movie has been out for 14 years now, and I mean, look, let's be honest, you rewatched it for this episode, and it hasn't necessarily aged horribly. But I mean, it was made 14 years ago, and it's still traumatizing because of the concept, right?
I took a break every 30 minutes, and not because it's like, oh, this movie's hard to watch. Like, I needed to breathe.
Yeah.
Like, it was a lot. Like, if we're gonna spoil moments, like trigger warning very heavily to people on the topic of self-harm and just torture and trauma in general. But like, there are moments in this, like the removing of the mask that you can see on my shirt a little bit. I nearly walked out the room. I was like, I can't do this. And every time I go to watch it, that scene is so traumatizing, I forgot about it. And like, I've only ever rewatched this to say to someone, no, you haven't seen the most fucked up film. It is Martyrs. And then been like, okay, I'm never going to watch it again. And then last night was the first time in 3 years that I willingly watched it, that I wanted to sit down and watch it for this. And 15 minutes in, I regretted it.
Yeah, no, I feel that. Well, I mean, look, this isn't a review. No. I'm not going to sit here and you're not going to sit here and give a rundown, a play-by-play of like every single scene and how ultimately this ends.
This is about your journey for the film.
Exactly. I was asked to explain why. Why is this my favorite horror movie? And I guess the easiest way to answer that, and in regards to what I enjoy in a horror, is like, horror to me has to be horror. Like, I don't want romance stories. I don't want the good guy to win. Like, I want to feel uncomfortable. I want to feel like, there's a weight on my chest and I can't breathe. And I guess Martyrs has that overwhelming nihilistic overtone that sort of feels like, you're suffocating the entire time. Like, it's just hard to breathe the whole way through the film. And I guess ultimately, it's been stated in media, and I believe the director, will get into that in a second, has stated this as well, in a roundabout way, that you basically have to become a martyr yourself to finish the film. You have to put yourself in a position to watch this. And I guess you can ask me some good questions about the film, and we'll go into it.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. The questions came 5 minutes ago. But I mean, like, you really do. It's one of the only movies I've had to sit there and just go, oh my days, what am I into? Like, afterwards, after the entire film finishes, I sat there for 20 minutes staring at a black screen, shaking, going, "What the hell did I just watch?" But yeah, I guess that's why. That's why in a nutshell.
No, I think that's perfect. It's one of the few films that follows a character's journey, and in this case, trauma, that you can almost feel it. Like it
Mm.
sells it perfectly to the audience. And again, we're not reviewing it, but that's the instinct I liked about it watching this time on my own, was that I could actually feel that connection with the characters more than in most horror movies that there is suffrage
Yeah,
and
yeah.
stuff. I actually know the reason why I first watched it, because I was pushing my boundaries of writing horror scripts at the time when I was studying, and so I can pinpoint where I discovered this. But Anthony, Volky, where did you discover it?
Well, when you asked me that question before we went live, I sat there and I'm like, I can't remember. So I've always been like wanting something extreme and wanting like good horror movies, and I could never find stuff that really really got me. I mean, there are plenty of other ones that I enjoy a lot as well. Um, Even some commercial ones, I'll be honest, that have stuck with me and I've enjoyed. But I just googled worldwide extreme horror or like depressing horrors or something, and I think this popped up because around the time I was searching, I believe that's when the big French new wave extremism horror films started coming out. Like you had the High Tensions, you had Frontiers, and you know, Martyrs as well. Inside is something I can't forget. Inside is another unbelievably depressing movie. But it all sort of came out. There's plenty more as well, but they were the big kind of four that came out around that time. And I think that's what really, really got me. Like Hortension came out, what, 2003? I think it was
Something
2003.
around then, yeah. It's
Yeah.
like America was having this new wave of found footage films, like with stuff like I think Paranormal Activity was making the
Mm,
college route when that came out,
hmm.
and it feels like European cinema and French cinema in particular was pushing the boundaries of intensity.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. And I mean, if you want me to give like a little, like what is Martyrs, like I guess I can kind of describe what Martyrs is without
Well, what is it to
reviewing it.
you? I think is the best way, because for me it's a journey of PTSD. Like that's the one thing that pushed for me. But for you, what is it to you?
Yeah. Well, look, a little bit about the film itself. Like it came out 2008, and Pascal Laugier is how I'm going to pronounce his last name.
You better
gonna
than me, mate.
I'm gonna get crucified, pun intended, on on this name, but I believe it's Pascal Laugier. And it was rejected by basically all the big French studios. And to be honest, a lot of actresses that read the script all declined it as well. And I mean, we'll get into a little bit later about why that happened. But
Oh yeah.
I believe it was Canal Plus picked it up, and they're a French TV station who even to this day, I guess they help finance some very very unusual projects. So they were the ones that came to sort of the rescue. But I guess you could say the movie starts kind of suggesting like a psychological horror, even like a revenge style movie.
Definitely. The first
Um,
half is like easily a revenge plot, without a
yeah,
doubt.
yeah,
Yeah.
it makes people sit there and be like, mm-hmm, yep, yep. But then it kind of descends into levels of like brutality that I guess we can't really fully describe without making people sick or not wanting to watch the films themselves,
Yeah.
or spoiling it. But we're not here to. Sorry, guys, we're not here to spoil it for you. I would
No.
rather everyone else go and watch the film and tell me or tell Sam like how it made you feel, like really
Yeah.
feel, not like
This is
the
this
first
is
take.
one. Yeah, and this is one, like, I think it gets compared to a lot to other films, which I guess I will talk about at one point with someone else, a Serbian film or Human Centipede, where it's like this kind of gets thrown into that of like, oh, it's an intensity torture porn type film, and I don't believe it is at all. I really don't think it hits that mark. But the one thing I will say about it is that it kind of like it is on that level of like it pushes you to the limit, and it's always interesting to see how it pushes people. Like I've always, rather than asking them what they thought of Martyrs, be like, well, how'd you feel about it? Like, I wanted to see how the intensity pushed them to the side. You
Mm,
know, it was
mhm.
one thing that you and I bonded over in our early days of friendship over, because like I remember being like, "What's the most intense movie you've seen?" You're like, "Martyrs," and I was like, "Yeah, it's pretty good, right?" And we're
Yeah.
just like, you know,
Yeah. Yeah, I remember trying to get you to watch it for like a year and a half. I
yeah,
was
I
like,
was like, I
man,
don't.
you need to watch this. You need to watch this damn film, Sam. Watch the I'm telling you, you love film. Watch this film. And you did.
Well,
And I remember that you came to work and you just didn't want to talk. You didn't smile. And you're like everyone that knows you, you're very jovial. You laugh a lot. You're a great person to be around. And you just didn't want to talk. I
it
was
took
like,
my innocence, this film.
yeah,
That's for
I'm like,
sure.
did you watch it? And he was like, yep. Yeah, I watched it. But I mean, I guess most people would kind of, or people that review the film, or people that talk about the film, I guess they would imply or state that it situates itself around the theme of suffering,
Yeah.
but not to be mistaken for pain. And boy, oh boy, there is a difference between suffering and pain, and this movie kind of like nails that, pun intended. Um, there are going to be so many puns during this that
Oh,
if you've
they're
seen the
not
movie,
good.
you'll understand them, and you're going to think I'm a
Yeah.
genius. But if you don't, then I'm sure, like, yeah, you just be like, what is he talking about? But I guess like there's layers, right? There's a
Yeah.
lot of layers to this
Yeah.
film, and I guess like in any good movie, if you peel back the skin of the outer suffering theme, pun intended, you would not kind of be mistaken if you were to notice how much the movie's kind of focusing on guilt. It's kind of like
Yeah.
bubbling away underneath there. It's like sinks into your brain without you actually knowing about it, and you're like, wow, wow, there's a lot of guilt and uncomfortable feeling in this movie as well.
Oh yeah, I totally forgot about that on this viewing. And
Yeah.
then like there's like a scene in it where they kind of points it out as much, and I remember seeing it, but I was like, oh shit, that's the connection of these two layers of plot and
Yeah.
stuff. And
Well, I
you know,
mean,
like,
yeah, go ahead if you want.
no, I was just gonna be like, it's something that like we discussed it briefly last night about it after I rewatched it, because I needed to talk about after watching it again. And I was like, fuck, I forgot how layered this film is. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what I meant. I forgot it actually goes through the guilt of grief, as well as the guilt of not acting upon something, and then not doing something in the right time, and trying to right wrongs that you can't right. Like,
Agreed. Agreed.
it's
Yep.
a very, like, when people put it in this whole pit of like, oh, Human Centipede, a Serbian film, or
No.
Hostel,
No.
this has got a lot of moral to it. It's got a lot of
Yeah.
backbone.
There's actually a lot of underlying story to this film that goes way back to like previous French horror film about a young girl. I can't remember the name, but it's led do something. Uh, where if there's a car accident and the daughter loses her face, and the father's extremely guilty by it. It took a lot from that as well. And I mean, there's a lot of subjective and a lot of objective themes in this movie in particular, that's shot incredibly well. It kind of forces us to watch traumatizing events, but they're played out in like two different scenarios at the same time. Like without giving anything away, like a subjective view, we see Lucy, who's played by the actress Mylene Champenois.
You wanted to go for it.
I went in there, but Lucy, who's played by Marlene Champenois, being attacked by like a feral creature, it's almost zombie like it's real nightmare sort of stuff.
Oh yeah.
But in the objective view, Lucy is alone in the frame, and she's performing like the most traumatizing mutilation, sorry. And that in itself was like one of the hardest parts to sort of bear witness to, and like almost that entire scene, especially, I'm just gonna say the bathtub sort of scene. I couldn't breathe. I didn't breathe almost that entire time, and it was rough. It was rough.
Yeah, no, that's actually a perfect way to put those moments, because they are just, it's rather than trying to tiptoe around the topics of what you're about to see, it just shows you. It's
Mm.
blunt, it's brutal.
Mhm.
And yeah, like I had to converse with you after, just to put myself back in that moment and actually be like, okay, it's just a movie. these are the scenes, this is what it's portraying. I wish we recorded that conversation. We could have put that on the Patreon or something. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I feel like whenever we watch, you remember Midsummer? I don't want to talk about it, obviously.
Oh,
We're on a time frame here, but like with Midsummer, we literally watched it at the same time. Like,
yeah.
like we just had to talk about it. And
well, if we're going to talk deeply about it for quickly, I was stoned and you were sober, and I
true.
passed out because I was like stoned. And I woke up to the credits and messages being like, "Are you okay, Sam?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry I made you watch this when you're high."
Yeah.
And I was like,
you know what would be worse? Watching Martyrs. Like that
Yeah,
would have
no,
been way worse. But I
oh,
mean,
without a doubt. Like even this is a movie that when someone's like, "Oh, I'm gonna watch this stoned," or "I'm gonna watch this with," I'm gonna willingly. I'm like, please, like, be in a good place, be comfortable, be around someone, because it is traumatizing. It is a lot to say it. Like, you
yeah,
know, how
you're
would
right.
you push for someone to watch it? You know,
You're right.
when
And like I feel like that's where the snobbiness comes in, because you're probably going to get a lot of people in the comments, or people that are fans of different types of horror films are going to be like, "What do you mean? It was shit. It was so bad. Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like, if the acting was horrible. Are you kidding?" Like, I'll get
Nah.
into the acting in a second. Like, if you want me to talk about the actresses and what they went through in this, but like,
Well, that's the one thing I actually want to ask you real quick, because like I feel like when you find yourself emotionally attached to a movie, especially horror, what are like things that you discovered after reading into it? Because I know like you're very similar to me. You would have actually looked into the background, what other films the director has done,
yeah.
maybe what the production company's done, or even that you knew it was a hard sell to a production company. Like, is there anything that you found after the movie that is just as terrifying as the movie itself?
Well, put it this way: Pascal Laugier has only done 4 films. That says a lot. Like, Martyrs is a classic for any sort of extreme horror fan. It's always
Definitely.
going to be in there, regardless of what you think. If it's your favorite horror movie, it's not your favorite horror movie. It's definitely going to be a classic. And we're not talking about the American remake. We're talking about the original movie.
Oh
Is
yes.
definitely a classic, right?
Yeah, it's definitely, you know, like at least on a cult level. At
Yeah,
least on a cult level.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And like,
Yeah.
I guess to describe, or I mean, to answer your question, I might just finish like what I was saying about like the actresses themselves and the film itself, because that kind of explains, I guess. Like, if I can explain that, then people might understand like how much deeper like I looked into it afterwards, because it made me super curious about afterwards. And I mean, after Lucy's scenario, like after that sort of ends and there's that black screen after the sorry, and I mean, it ends in the most horrifyingly way that it could end. And I mean, how else would you want it to end, I guess?
I don't even think you like, how else is there a way to end this movie? Like, it's just
Yeah. I mean, I remember saying to you and anyone that I've said to watch it, when you get to that point about 45 minutes in or whatever it is, and there's the black screen after Lucy does what she does, you think it's over. And
Yeah.
like, honestly, if you haven't been breathing properly during the movie, that's your time to breathe, because it's only going to get worse and much worse.
Oh yeah. I've explained it to people that it's like a lapse in like a 1,500-meter race. Like, that is the halfway mark, and that is the only time you get given a chance
Yeah.
of like, you're nearly there. We're
Yep.
halfway down.
Yeah.
Keep, like, this is your last deep breath, because
Yep.
it is so much, and it gets worse and worse and worse, and then you're like, oh
Boom.
fuck, okay, we're okay, and then it keeps going.
Yeah, it just snowballs. And I mean, after that part, we sort of now we start to focus on Anna, who is played hauntingly well, absolutely brilliantly by Moyana Alawi. I'm gonna assume
I
that's
reckon you got
happened.
that right, actually.
I
That's
feel
pretty
like
good.
I got it. But
All
she's
respect to these people.
yeah. I mean, gosh, they are brilliant, and what they went through, which I'm about to get into a little bit, like, just fantastic. We kind of spiral into what can only be described in sort of our times, like modern times, as torture porn. However, it's not torture porn. It feels so much more real than, like, you know, Hostel. Because even Pascal Laugier came out and said that he was inspired by Hostel. I think that was like 2005-ish that came out.
2005, yeah.
Yeah, and he was very inspired by that, but he thought it was still commercial. It wasn't dark enough for him. And I guess like the reason I think it's more real is the torture itself. And like, correct me if I'm wrong, or say what you want to say about it, but the torture itself and the people that are implementing it are, well, let's be absolutely honest, kind of boring. They aren't Michael Myers. They aren't like weirdos from Jeepers Creepers. Like,
they're normal people in a sense. They're
without
like a every Sunday family.
Yeah, without giving anything away, they're just kind of them, right?
Yeah.
It's just them, because like this day and age, I actually feel like that could happen. What happens to Anna, I feel like could actually happen.
Without a doubt. Yeah, and I think that's what got me a lot this time was like seeing the family. Like there's a shot that in particularly stuck with me was like the newspaper article in the fridge.
Yep.
And it was like that just solidifies they're your neighbor.
Yeah.
They're academics. They got kids that are athletic. Like, you know,
Yep.
even when she's like, "How old are you?" and he's like, "I'm 18." Like, it's just normal.
Yeah.
Fucked,
Yeah.
you know?
No, I agree. And like, to circle back to the question you asked about like what after the movie, like what I got into, like now that, people that may have not seen the movie kind of get a gist of like what horrors await them. I guess we can attest to the brutality and the physical and the emotional brutality of the film. I've got a quote from Pascal Laugier. The main problem, beyond the technical difficulties, was to deal with the fact that the actresses had to cry a lot, almost every day, and it's something very difficult to obtain from an actress, because after a while, their eyes are as dry as their emotions. I had to push them to make them accept to fall again and again into their inner dark world so they would be convincing on screen and the shots would match. It was a very hard process. Might I add, after that both of the actresses have stated they will never work with Laugier again. One of the actresses haven't really done many films since, and one of them has done a few films, but nothing horror-based. And Eloise broke 3 bones during filming, and had to stay in bed for 6 weeks, which is brutal, man.
That's actually a lot. I didn't know that she had. Excuse me. I didn't know she actually went through those injuries. That's actually intense.
Mm-hmm.
It actually reminds me a lot of there's a filmmaker which everyone kind of jokes about, Werner Herzog. He famously created a movie, Fitzcarraldo. I can never say it right, and it's a foreign film, but he pushed the lead actor Klaus, so much that he was having mental breakdowns on set, and it was mainly because the character that the film is based on was having mental breakdowns in the actual story.
Yep.
So like it's very, very similar to those levels of pushing and stuff. And like I remember one thing that like we talked about this movie a hell of a lot, like when we first were hanging out in the aisles of JB Hi-Fi, fuck it, we'll say it. And my favorite thing is when we got a horror section in the store, like a proper horror section. And teenagers would always come in on a Thursday night and be like, "I've watched all these horror movies, nothing scares me." And I would hear them say that and I'd be like, "You boys watch Martyrs?"
Yeah.
And just they'd be like, "No, what's that?" I'm like, "It's French." And they'd be like, "I'm not watching subtitles." I'm like, "You wouldn't be able to cope." And then that's enough. Like that's how I'd push people. Like if I just overheard them having that conversation. The second time I watched it was purely because my best friend was like, "Oh, I've seen, everything that's really intense." And I was like, "You haven't seen anything until you've seen Martyrs." And I watched it with him again, and I was like, "I don't want to watch this, dude. It's that bad."
Yeah.
And even at the end of it, he was like, "Yeah, that was bad." Like, I want to kind of wrap things up real quick, and I know we're kind of rushing the ending because we're trying to stick to the time frame. But how would you recommend this to someone? Like, if someone was like, "Oh, like, what do you think of Martyrs?" Or like, "Do you have a movie for me that I've not seen before that's going to push?" How would you recommend that to someone and help them either watch it or get through it?
Oh God, get through it. Pun intended by saying "oh God." Like there. I feel like if someone in the comments can actually nail, pun intended, all of the puns that I've done during this little This
I feel like you're enjoying it a little
this
bit. And it
podcast. Oh
scares
man,
me.
I've worked on them. I've been thinking about them. But if you guys can nail them, you get like a lollipop or something. But I mean, look, Pascal Laugier confessed that he wrote the screenplay for this in a film. This film, sorry, in a state of clinical depression, and he was borderline suicidal, which is a great way to sort of describe how nihilistic and depressing the subject matter is. So I would say prepare yourself for a film that is very heavy. There's not much light to this film. It's not what you expect. And just go in with a open mind and understanding that at the end of it, you're probably going to have to go and watch Happy Feet or you know, Mr. Popper's Penguins or something and go and relax and enjoy that for a bit, because it's just a heavy movie, and that's what I want in a horror movie.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad that we could share this whole topic of like, what is your favorite movie? And reminder to everyone, this is not a review. We're not scoring this. We want to dig deep into what people's favorites are when it comes to this genre, because it is such, like, I thought about it the other day, just to wrap things up and converse right now, that this is kind of like the metal of movies when it comes to genres, like metals of music, sorry, like when it comes to movies. Horror is so layered, and there's so many subgenres, and there's so many different types, and for different reasons and different effects, like, you know. And I think this is such a good way to kind of break down what, you know, what we're trying to talk about here. So Anthony, Mr. Volky, thank you so much. Host of the Brightside podcast that I do with. I'm introducing you horribly at the end, but
It's like, well, wait till the end.
yeah,
That's all good. I
feel
got
like
you,
it's like a
boo.
hot one thing, like, do your plugs, go for it.
Gotcha, boo. You can catch us on Sundays at around 10 p.m. on twitch.tv/Volky. He'll put it in the comments and everything. But again, thank you, Sam. This is your show. Got nothing to do with me. I'm just here to fucking share about how much I love martyrs. And the amount of times I've sworn during this is not going to be monetized whatsoever.
I like to think I was on my best behavior.
You were?
I swore once.
Look, I swore once, and in my head I was like, oh, there goes any chance of that happening. I also said suicide. Oh, did it again. There we go. But no, seriously.
This is such a hard movie to not dance around those
And
things,
especially,
like,
yeah, self-harm, especially.
Yeah.
Self-harm, yeah. But look, seriously, thank you. I think this is a fantastic idea of yours to do something like this, not do a review, but just talk to people about their favorite horror movies, because, I mean, we can't do that on the podcast every week, so
No, and this is my favorite. Like, this is my favorite time to talk about like movies, and I always see people react to like in when we do the show, like when they react to like, no, I hated that movie, he's wrong, and I'm like, well, fuck you, okay,
yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm glad we had a great time, Anthony. Thank you so much for bringing martyrs to light to us, and it's good to hear that you're scared.
Thanks, mate. Thanks for having me. Peace.